The logbook already had writing in it. I hadn't started the job yet, hadn't even driven up to the tower. I was sitting in a motel in Robbinsville, North Carolina the night before my first shift, flipping through the pages to learn the format. The previous Lookout's entries ended on September 10 of last year. Clean, professional. Final line, closing station for season. But the book didn't stop there. 4 more lines, different handwriting. Smaller, left-leaning, no initials, no date. Station will reopen June 1. New lookout will arrive by midday. South-facing window sticks in humidity above 60%. Left the shim in the drawer under the firefinder. I read it 3 times. That wasn't the previous lookout's writing. I'd been staring at his entries for 40 pages. I knew his hand. This was someone else. Maybe maintenance. Maybe a ranger who stopped by in the off-season and jotted a note. But it was in the logbook itself. And the guy who trained me, Dale Riggins, District Fire Management Officer, been doing the job 30 years, had specifically told me the logbook is a legal document. You don't scribble tips in legal documents. I almost asked about it the next morning when I picked up my radio and supplies. I didn't. It felt small, petty. I didn't want to be the new guy who flags a handwriting issue on day 1, so I drove up. The access road to Cheobald Tower is 4 miles of gravel. Last mile's steep. I parked at the turnaround and hauled my gear up the tower stairs in 3 loads. The cab was 14 by 14, cot along the north wall, propane stove, storage shelf, wooden chair. The firefinder, heavy brass sighting instrument bolted to a pedestal in the center, for getting bearings on smoke columns. 4 windows, 1 per wall. The south-facing window stuck. I pushed it. It stopped at about 4 inches. Humidity was probably 65 that morning. Early June in the southern Appalachians. I opened the drawer into the firefinder. Small wooden shim, 3 inches. Wrapped in masking tape. So the note was right. That should have been reassuring. Someone had been helpful, practical. But standing there holding that shim, I felt something I couldn't name. Not fear. More like the feeling you get when you realize someone's been in your apartment while you were out. Not because anything's missing. Because something's slightly more organized than you left it. I wedged the shim in. Window opened fine. I made my first entry at 1300, June 1. Station opened, equipment accounted for. Winds west at 5, visibility 15 miles, haze, no smoke. My name is Ray Calloway. I initialed it RC. First 4 days were what I expected. Quiet, long, good. Weather observations at 0, 800, 1200, 1600, 2000. Horizon scans every hour during peak fire conditions. Canned food, instant coffee, paperback novels, morning and evening radio check-ins. Dispatch was a woman named Patty. Sounded like she'd been working the radio longer than I'd been alive. Simple routine. I was sleeping better than I had in a year. Day 5, June 5. I did my 0800 observation and opened the logbook to record it. There was already an entry. 080 Sierra, winds non-Wow-Katsaush 8, visibility 12 mile, light haze, relative humidity 72%, no smoke, no initials, same handwriting as the note after the previous lookout's entries, small, left-leaning, neat. I looked at it for a long time. The numbers were close to what I'd just measured, not exact. My reading had winds northwest at 6, visibility maybe 15, humidity around 70. Close, but off slightly, like someone had made a good estimate instead of a precise measurement. I told myself I must have written it and forgotten. Maybe I got up early, half asleep, jotted down numbers, went back to bed. I'd been sleeping hard. The altitude, the quiet, the physical work of hauling water. But it wasn't my handwriting. I know my handwriting. Blocky. Upright. A little sloppy. This was small, left-leaning, careful. I wrote my actual observation below it. Initialed it. Moved on. That's what you do. June 8th. Same thing. Opened the logbook for my 0800 observation. Entry already there. Same handwriting. Same format. Closed but not exact numbers. No initials. I checked the door. 1 entrance. Top of the stairs. Simple deadbolt. Locked. I'd locked it the night before like I always did. Windows all closed except the south one, shimmed open about 6 inches. Not enough for a person. I walked down the stairs and circled the base. No footprints other than my own path to the latrine and the water cache. No tire tracks at the turnaround other than my truck. Nobody had been up there. I went back up, looked at the entry again, put my hand over it and rewrote the same numbers from memory to compare. Not mine. Not even close. That bothered me more than the entry itself. Because if I'd written it in my sleep or in some early morning fog, it would still be my handwriting. People don't change their penmanship when they're half-conscious. If anything, it gets worse. Not different. I wrote my observation, initialed it, added a small note in the margin, pre-existing entry noted, origin unknown, Estherake. I thought about calling dispatch, thought about radioing Dale, but what would I say? Someone's writing weather observations in my logbook? Almost correct observations, in handwriting that isn't mine, inside a locked tower at 5,000 feet? That sounds like a mental health issue. That sounds like the kind of thing that gets you pulled off a post. I didn't call it in. June 10. Again. Same format. Same handwriting. But this time the entry said, '08 winds S4, visibility 18 mi, humidity 64%. No smoke. Dew point dropping. Watch afternoon thermals. That last part. Watch afternoon thermals. That last part. Watch afternoon thermals. That wasn't a weather observation. That was operational guidance. The kind of thing a more experienced person writes for someone they're mentoring. Something was different about this one. I checked the afternoon thermals that day. They were notable. Upslope winds shifted hard around 1400, pushing from the south-southwest. I picked up a faint column at about 245 degrees that turned out to be a legal burn on private land across the county line. If I hadn't been watching for it, I might have missed the early stage. The phantom entry had been right, not just about the weather, about what to watch for. That evening I sat in the cab with my coffee going cold and tried to think about it rationally. Option 1. Someone was accessing the tower at night while I slept. Nearly impossible. The stairs creak. The door was locked. I'm not a heavy sleeper. Option 2. I was writing the entries myself and not remembering. Frightening, but it didn't explain my handwriting. Option 3. The entries had been there before I arrived and I just hadn't noticed. But they were dated for current days, June 2025, and they appeared on pages I had personally flipped past the day before and seen blank. None of it made sense. I started doing something I'm a little embarrassed about. Every night before bed, I marked the next blank page with a small pencil dot in the lower right corner. Tiny, barely visible. Just so I could confirm in the morning it was the same page. The dot was always there. Same page. But sometimes the entry was already on it. By mid-June, the phantom entries were showing up every 2 or 3 days. Always the 0800 slot. Always close but not exact. Always close but not exact. Always in that same small left-leaning hand. And increasingly, they included operational notes. Humidity recovery overnight suggests stable morning. Watch for inversions trapping smoke in the valley. Wind shift expected by 1400. Southwest component. Scan 200 to 260 degrees. Dry lightning possible tonight per regional forecast. Preposition report forms. These weren't guesses, they were accurate. Not always perfectly, but well within the range of an experienced lookout's judgment. Whoever was writing them knew the job. Knew this specific terrain. I started a private notebook. Pocket-sized composition book I'd brought for personal journaling. I logged every phantom entry, date, content, how it compared to actual conditions. I wanted a record outside the official logbook. Something I controlled entirely. On June 18th, I picked up the radio. Dispatch, Chio, lookout. Go ahead, Chio. Patty, question. Do you show any other lookout stations currently staffed in the Chio district? Pause. Negative, Chio. You're the only staffed tower this season. Wea bald unstaffed. Standing Indian unstaffed. Just you. Copy. What about adjacent districts? Anything close enough to share visual on my coverage area? Closest staffed tower would be in the Pisgah district. Albert Mountain. About 35 miles east. Why? You seeing someone? No, I said. Just getting oriented on the network. Thanks, Patty. You bet, honey. I set the radio down. I don't know what I was hoping for. That there was another lookout nearby who was somehow slipping into my tower. That someone was playing a long, physically impossible prank. I didn't have an answer. I just had entries. June 19, Longest phantom entry yet. Awaiting sands, winds none to width 12, gusting 18. Visibility 22-mile clearing. Humidity 58%. No smoke. Front passage complete. High pressure building. Good drying day. Ray should recalibrate the Firefinder azimuth ring. It's reading about 1.5 degrees east. Check against the known reference point at Fontana Dam. Bearing should be 312.5. Ray. The entry used my name. I sat there for probably 5 minutes without moving. I could hear my own breathing and the wind on the glass and nothing else. Then I checked the Firefinder. I sighted on Fontana Dam, the long, pale line of concrete across the Little Tennessee River, about 12 miles north-northwest, clearly visible that morning. The azimuth ring read 314. The entry said the correct bearing should be 312.5. I looked up the survey bearing from the reference sheet Dale had given me. True bearing from Cheobald Tower to Fontana Dam, 312.4 degrees. The Firefinder was off by 1.6 degrees east. The phantom entry had said approximately 1.5. I recalibrated it. Took about 20 minutes. Set screws adjusted with a small flathead until the known reference aligned. When I was done, I sat back down and looked at the logbook. Whoever was writing in it knew my name, knew the equipment, knew a specific calibration error I hadn't caught in 18 days of use, and the correction was right. I wasn't scared. That's what I keep trying to explain, and nobody quite believes me. I wasn't scared. I was disoriented. There's a difference. Fear is about threat. This didn't feel like a threat. It felt like being guided by someone I couldn't see, for reasons I couldn't determine, through a channel that shouldn't exist. And the guidance was making me better at the job. The thermal warnings were accurate. The calibration fix was needed. The weather interpretations were sharper than anything I could produce with 3 weeks of experience. Whatever this was, it was helpful. That's the part that made it hard to treat as a problem. June 22. First supply drop since the entries started appearing regularly. A ranger named Mike drove up the access road with water jugs, propane, and shelf-stable food. Mike was maybe 30. Friendly. Built like he'd been hauling trail debris since high school. He helped me carry the water up, and we stood in the cab for a few minutes looking at the view. I made a decision. Hey, look at these entries. The ones without initials. He leaned over the logbook. Yeah, I didn't write those. He looked at me, not alarmed, mildly curious. Someone been up here? No, tower's locked. I'd hear anyone on the stairs. And that's not my handwriting. He looked at the entries again, flipped back through a few pages. Huh, he said. That is weird. Yeah, you think someone came up before you started? Pre-wrote stuff? They're dated currently, and they're accurate. The weather observations match actual conditions for those days. He straightened up, looked at me differently, not suspicious. More like he was recalculating something. You been sleeping okay up here? Fine. Better than I have in years. Eating? Yes. Getting enough water? Easy to get dehydrated at this elevation. I understood what he was doing, running through the checklist, isolation effects, altitude, dehydration, mental state. I'd have done the same thing. Mike, I'm not hallucinating entries in my own logbook. Look at the handwriting, compare it to mine. He did. Spent a solid minute going back and forth between my entries and the phantom ones. That's definitely different writing, he said. Yeah. Could someone be coming up the trail? AT hikers? The door is dead bolted from inside at night. These appear between my last entry at night and when I open the book in the morning. He didn't have an answer. Said he'd mention it to Dale. I said okay. He left. Nobody followed up. I radioed dispatch the next day. Patty said she hadn't heard anything about it. I let it go. Late June. The entries were appearing almost daily now. I'd stopped being startled. I'd developed a routine, open the logbook, read the phantom entry, compare it to my own observations, note the discrepancies in my private notebook, write my own entry below it. It had become a kind of dialogue. I don't mean we were communicating. The phantom writer never acknowledged my entries, never responded to the margin notes I'd started leaving. It was more like parallel commentary. Two observers watching the same landscape from the same point, recording slightly different versions of what they saw. But on June 29, something changed. 0808, winds variable 3-5, visibility 10 mile, valley fog, humidity 88%, no smoke. Tell Patty the Waya frequency is bleeding into channel 3 again. She'll know what I mean. I stared at that. Then I picked up the radio. Dispatch HEO lookout. Go ahead, Shio. Patty, this might sound strange. Has anyone mentioned the Waya frequency bleeding into channel 3? Dead silence. 5 seconds. 10. Who told you about that? Her voice had changed, not alarmed. Careful. Is it a known issue? It was, years ago. We had crosstalk on the Waya repeater that bled over when atmospheric conditions were right. We fixed it in, I think 2019, replaced the duplexer. Why are you asking about that? Someone mentioned it. Who? There's nobody else up there. I know. Patty, who was the lookout at Chio before Glen Massey? Another pause. I could hear a chair creak. Before Glen? That would have been Claire Barham. She was up there, let me think, 3 seasons. 2017, 2018, 2019. What happened to her? She left. Applied for a transfer, got placed out west. Idaho, I think, or Montana, after the 2019 season. Is she still with the Forest Service? I don't know, honey. That was 6 years ago. Why all the questions? I didn't answer right away. The handwriting in the logbook, I said. There's a set of entries that aren't Glen's and aren't mine. Would Claire have used this same logbook? No. Each season gets a fresh book. Old ones go to the district office for archiving. Claire's logs would be in the records room in Robbinsville, so there's no reason her handwriting would be in my logbook. No, there isn't. I thanked her and signed off. Something was off. Not the phantom entries, I was almost used to those. Something about Patty's reaction. She hadn't dismissed the way our question. She'd reacted to it, recognized it as specific and technical and dated. And she hadn't asked me why a piece of 2019 vintage radio trivia was showing up in a 2025 conversation from a tower staffed by someone who'd only been on the job 4 weeks. She'd just told me who Claire Barham was and where she'd gone, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. I need to tell you about the binoculars. Part of the lookout equipment is a pair of mounted binoculars on a swivel bracket near the west window. Heavy, stabilized, maybe 20 by magnification. You use them to evaluate distant haze columns, determine if something's smoke or mist, rising or dissipating. July 3. Afternoon scan, sweeping west and northwest. I stopped. There's a ridge about 9 miles west-northwest called Hooper Bald, high grass bald. No trees on top. Just grass and rock and wind. Used to have a lookout tower there. I'd seen the footings on a topo map. Decommissioned in the 90s. Cab removed. Steel frame left to rust. Through the binoculars, I could see something catching the sun. It looked like glass. I adjusted the focus. At 9 miles and 20x, you can't get a crisp image, but you can get an impression. What I was seeing looked like a reflection off a flat surface, consistent with a window or mirror, positioned right where the old tower cap would have been. I'd looked at Hooper Bald every day for a month. Bare summit. Grass. Rock. Maybe some remnant metal. But on July 3rd, there was a reflection. I noted it in the logbook. 14:15, anomalous reflection observed Hooper Bald summit bearing 288 degrees. Duration approximately 3 min before cloud cover. Possible glass or metal debris. RC. Next morning, July 4. The phantom entry. 08 Hever winds W6. Visibility 20 mi. Humidity 62%. No smoke. He's looking now. Good. I set the logbook down. Picked it up again. Read it again. He's looking now. Good. This is where I started making decisions I've gone back and forth on. After that July 4 entry, I did not radio dispatch. Did not tell anyone. I made a choice to treat this as an investigation instead of a report. My reasoning, if I told someone that invisible handwriting in my logbook was commenting on my behavior, I'd be removed from the tower. Evaluated. Probably not allowed back, and I'd never understand what was happening. If I investigated on my own, I might find an answer. I could always report later, so I investigated. I tried to verify the Hooper Bald reflection, watched for it every afternoon for a week. It appeared twice more, July 6 and July 9, first times mid-afternoon when the sun angle was right, both times lasting only a few minutes, consistent with glass at the summit oriented roughly east-southeast, toward my tower. I tried to find out more about Claire Barham. No internet at the tower, no cell signal, no satellite link, just the radio. On supply day, July 7, I asked Mike if he'd heard the name. He thought about it. Claire? Yeah, I think so. Before my time, but people mention her. She was good, apparently. Really good. Like one of those lookouts the old-timers compare everyone else to. What happened to her? Transferred, I think. Why? Found some entries in the logbook that might be hers? That look again. The recalculating look. The logbook you've got is brand new, Ray. We issued it this season. I know. He didn't push it. Hauled the water. Left. And then, this is the decision I go back and forth on most. On July 10, my day off from Firewatch, I hiked to Hooper Bald. 9 miles as the crow flies. Closer to 14 by trail. I left before dawn, followed the AT south to Hangover Lead, then cut west on an unmaintained path that connects to the Hooper Bald access. Reached the summit around noon. No glass. No debris. No tower remains of any kind. The old footings were gone. Removed, or never there. Just grass and exposed rock, and a 360-degree view that would stop your heart. But I found something. Near the center of the bald, in an area roughly where a tower foundation would have been, there was a flat rock about 2 feet across, cleared of vegetation. On top of it, a small cairn. 6 or 7 stacked stones. Deliberately balanced. Under the bottom stone, held against the wind, was a folded piece of paper. Standard lined notebook paper. Same small left-leaning handwriting. You came. I wasn't sure you would. The reflection is mine. I use a signal mirror when conditions are right. I can see your tower from here. I can't get to you the way you'd expect. The logbook is the only way I've found that works reliably. Please keep writing. I need the observations. CB Claire Barham. I sat down on the grass next to the cairn and read the note 3 more times. My hands weren't shaking, but something inside my chest was doing something I couldn't name. I looked west. Mountain ridges layered to the horizon, each slightly bluer than the last, clearest day I'd had. I looked east. I could see Cheobald. On it, the tiny angular shape of the tower. I could also see from this vantage point a faint trail through the high grass on the east side of Hooper Bald. Not an official trail, not maintained, but a line where the grass was shorter and the ground slightly more worn, as if someone walked it regularly. I followed it about 100 yards. It led to a small flat area sheltered by a rock outcrop. Someone had made a camp. Not formal. No tent. But there was a tarp tied between 2 rocks, a plastic storage tub with a latching lid, and a circle of blackened stones for a fire. Inside the tub, a signal mirror, a pair of binoculars, a handheld radio turned off, no batteries, a stack of composition notebooks held together with a rubber band, and a laminated frequency card. Chio District Dispatch, the old wire repeater channel. The composition notebooks were full of weather observations, dated daily, going back 3 years. 3 years of daily weather observations from an unstaffed, decommissioned lookout point, recorded by someone apparently living on the summit of Hooper Bald. Most recent entry, July 9th, the day before. The handwriting matched the phantom entries in my logbook exactly. I checked again. Held my logbook next to the composition notebook and compared letter by letter. The lowercase a, the way the tight crossed slightly left of the stem, the distinctive W in the wind directions, identical. But here's the thing I couldn't process sitting there on that bald in the wind, the thing I still can't fully process. The composition notebooks went back 3 years. Claire Barham left the Forest Service after the 2019 season. That's 6 years. The notebooks only covered the last 3. There was a gap. And the entries in my logbook, the phantom entries, were appearing in a locked room, in a book inside a dead-bolted tower, overnight, in handwriting that matched someone camping 9 miles away, with no apparent way to get into my cab. I didn't take anything from the camp. Left the note where it was, restacked the cairn, hiked back, took until after dark to reach the tower. I climbed the stairs with my headlamp, unlocked the deadbolt, went inside. New entry in the logbook. 2000. No observation. Ray is away, hoping he found the camp. If he did, he should know I'm not trying to scare him. I just need someone on the network again. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Because I was trying to build a framework that could hold all of it. Someone, apparently Claire Barham, was living on Hooper Bald. Had been for at least 3 years, conducting daily weather observations from a decommissioned lookout point with no official standing. Somehow writing entries in my logbook from 9 miles away, and she wanted to be part of the Fire Lookout Network. The logbook entries were the part I couldn't crack. Everything else had rational footing, even if it was unusual. A person living off-grid on a remote bald? Uncommon. Maybe technically illegal on Forest Service land, but not impossible. Conducting private weather observations? Eccentric, not impossible. Using a signal mirror to watch another tower? Sure. But writing in a book inside the locked room, overnight, from 9 miles away. I checked the page, felt the paper. The ink was real. The indentation from the pen was real. I held the page up to the light. Normal ballpoint. Pressed firmly. Same as every other phantom entry. I started thinking about things I didn't want to think about. Whether I was writing the entries, not consciously, not while awake, but in some dissociative state. Sleepwalking, maybe. Writing in a hand that wasn't my own, about things I somehow knew subconsciously but couldn't access during the day. The calibration error. The way of frequency. The name Claire Barham, which maybe I'd seen on a document somewhere and filed away without registering. I got out of bed. Wrote a page in my personal notebook. Wrote a page with my left hand. Tried to write as small and as neatly as I could. None of it looked like the phantom handwriting. Not close. I wasn't writing them, but that left me with something I couldn't explain, and I didn't know what to do with it. July 14, Supply Day. Mike came up. I decided to tell him about Hooper Bald. Not the logbook entries, just the camp. A person living illegally on Forest Service land is reportable regardless. Mike, I hiked to Hooper Bald on my day off. Yeah? That's a haul. There's someone camped up there. Semi-permanent. Tarp, storage, fire ring. He stopped stacking water jugs. On the Bald itself, east side and a rock shelter. Huh. Might be an AT section hiker with a base camp. We get that. This wasn't a hiker camp. There were weather observation notebooks, binoculars, a handheld radio. He looked at me for a long moment. Weather observations? Daily. Going back 3 years. He sat down on the top step of the tower stairs. I'd never seen him do that. He was usually in a hurry. Ray, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to just hear it before you react. Okay. There's been I don't know what to call it, a presence, a situation, on Hooper Bald for a while, longer than 3 years. Hikers report seeing someone up there occasionally. A woman. We sent people to check, and sometimes there's evidence of a camp, sometimes there isn't. Moves around. We've never made contact. Why didn't anyone tell me this during orientation? Because it's not official. It's not in any report. Dale knows. Patty knows. Trail crew knows. But no one's confirmed who it is, and she's never caused any trouble. No fires, no environmental damage, no interactions with the public. She's just up there. It's Claire Barham, I said. Mike's face did something I couldn't read. Not surprise. More like confirmation of something he'd suspected but hadn't wanted to confirm. What makes you say that? I told him about the note. Not the logbook. Just the note under the cairn, signed CB. He rubbed his face with both hands. Okay, I need to talk to Dale. Don't do anything. Don't go back over there. Let us handle it. Is she in danger? I don't know. I don't know what she is. She was a good lookout, Ray. Probably the best one this district ever had. And then she transferred, and apparently she didn't. Or she came back. I don't know. Let me talk to Dale. He left faster than usual. 5 days. No word from Dale. No word from anyone. The phantom entries kept coming. They became more conversational. July 15th, 0800 winds E3. Visibility 8 mi valley fog will burn off by 1,000. Humidity 81%. Did you tell them about me? July 16th, 0800 winds NE5. Visibility 14 mi. Humidity 70%. They won't come. They never come. It's easier to know someone's there than to deal with what it means. July 17, 0800. Clear. Calm. Visibility 25 plus me. Best day this season. Look at 245 degrees around 1300. Controlled burn on the Nantahala side. It'll throw smoke, but it's permitted. At 13:15 on July 17, smoke appeared at 245 degrees. I called it in. Patty confirmed. Scheduled. Prescribed burn. The phantom entry knew before I did. Before the smoke was visible. Possibly before the burn was even lit. July 18, 0800. Winds 78. Building cumulus. Humidity dropping. I think there's going to be a fire today. Real one. Not prescribed. Watch the snowbird drainage 195 to 210 degrees after 1500. At 1538, I spotted a smoke column at 204 degrees. I grabbed the firefinder. Sighted on it. Read the azimuth. Called dispatch. Dispatched Chio lookout with an initial smoke report. Go ahead, Chio. Smoke column observed bearing 204 degrees from Chio bald. Color white turning gray. Rising vertically. Estimated distance 8 to 10 miles. Possibly Snowbird Creek drainage. Time observed 1538. Patty came back fast. Copy, Chio. We have a report from a patrol unit in the same area. Looks like a lightning holdover from last night. Good catch. Stand by. Real fire. Caught early. In the exact window the phantom entry predicted. At the bearing it specified. I sat in the cab after that call and thought, whoever Claire Barham is, wherever she is, whatever she is, whatever's happening with these entries, she's a better lookout than I will ever be. Doing this job from 9 miles away, without equipment, without authority, without anyone acknowledging she exists. Doing it better than anyone on the payroll. And then I thought about what she'd written. That she needed someone on the network. And I understood. She could see the fires. She could read the weather. She could interpret the terrain, the fuel conditions, the atmospheric setup, with a precision that comes from years of obsessive daily practice. But she had no radio, no official standing, no way to call anything in. She was a lookout with no voice. I was her voice. The logbook entries weren't a haunting, they weren't a mystery, they were a workaround. July 19. Dale Rickens climbed my tower. I hadn't seen him since orientation. He came up the stairs slowly, stood in the cab, looked around without speaking. Then he sat in the wooden chair and looked at me. Mike told me what you found. Yeah, and about the logbook. I paused. Mike didn't know about the logbook. Dale held my gaze. Patty told me. About the Wea frequency question, I put it together. I opened the logbook and showed him everything. Every phantom entry going back to June 5. The handwriting comparison. The operational notes. The fire prediction from the day before. He read through them slowly. His face didn't change. When he finished, he closed the book and sat with his hands on his knees for a long time. I trained Claire, he said. 3 seasons. Sharpest lookout I ever worked with. Probably the sharpest in the region. She had an instinct for fire behavior that you can't teach. You can read every textbook there is, but she could feel when the day was going to turn. I've never seen anything like it. What happened to her? She applied for a transfer after 2019. Said she needed a change. I wrote her a reference. She got placed at a lookout in the Nez Perce Clearwater in Idaho. Did 1 season 2020, then resigned. I got a form notification. No explanation. Tried calling a few times. Number disconnected. And then she came back here. Apparently. Started getting reports maybe 2022, 2023. Hikers seeing someone on Hooper Bald. Trail crew finding camp signs. I went up there myself. Spring of 2024. Found a fire ring. Some weather notes under a rock. Her hand writing. Why didn't you do anything? He looked out the west window, toward Hooper Bald. Because she wasn't hurting anything. Because the forest is big, and she's not the first person to disappear into it. Because I figured if she wanted to be found, she'd come in. And because... He stopped. Because what? Because I wasn't sure bringing her in was the right thing. She left for a reason. She came back for a reason. And the observations she's been making. I've seen the notebooks. Patty told me about the fire call yesterday. She spotted that holdover before a patrol unit did, Ray. From 9 miles away, without instruments. I waited. But the logbook, he said. That's the part I can't explain. And it's the part that worries me. You think I'm writing them. No. I looked at the handwriting. It's hers. I recognized it the second. Mike described what you were seeing. I just don't know how. That makes two of us. He stood up. I'm going to make a decision, and I need you to understand my reasoning. I'm not going to file a report. Not about the camp, not about the logbook, not about Claire. If I file, law enforcement gets involved. They go up to Hooper Bald. They find a woman living alone in the backcountry in a potentially vulnerable state. They remove her. They put her in a system she clearly left on purpose. And we lose the best fire spotter in the district. That's, I started. A judgment call. I know. Might be the wrong one. But I've been doing this 30 years, and the mountains have their own logic. And sometimes the right thing to do is not the thing that goes in a report. He started down the stairs. Stopped. Keep logging your observations. Both sets. If she calls a fire, you call it in. Understood? Understood. He left. I listened to his truck fade down the gravel. I opened the logbook, the next blank page, where tomorrow's entry would appear. Already had a single line. Thank you, Dale. I don't know how to explain the weeks that followed without sounding like I'd accepted something I should have kept questioning. July turned into August. The phantom entries kept appearing, and I stopped treating them as anomalies and started treating them as what they functionally were. A second lookout's observations, transmitted through a method I didn't understand, integrated into my daily operations. Claire. I'd started thinking of her as Claire, which maybe was the first sign I'd crossed some line. Spotted 3 more fires before I did. 2 were small and already monitored. But one on August 8th was a significant ignition in the Cheo Creek watershed that I reported 12 minutes before the next closest observer. The initial attack crew later said those 12 minutes made a meaningful difference in containment. She also started leaving notes on the Bald. I went back twice more in late July and early August. The cairn always had new paper under it. Practical notes. Fuel moisture estimates, descriptions of lightning scars she'd found walking through the surrounding timber. A sketch map of a snowbird wilderness section with historic fire perimeters drawn from memory. I left notes in return. Relay requests she wanted me to pass to Patty. Updates on prescribed burn schedules. Copies of the regional weather forecasts I received each morning. We developed the system, an unofficial, unauthorized, 2-station lookout network. One station that existed only in notebooks and cairns and logbook entries that appeared by methods I couldn't explain. I stopped trying to explain the logbook. I want to be honest about that. Not because I wasn't curious, but because every explanation I could generate was either impossible or deeply unsettling. And the practical reality was that the entries were accurate and useful, and I needed them. I recognize how that sounds. Accepting an unexplainable phenomenon because it's useful is not the same as understanding it, but I was finding fires. Early, accurately, because a woman 9 miles away was feeding me information through a channel that shouldn't work. And the fires were real, and the early detection was real, and the acres saved were real. What was I supposed to do? Stop reading the logbook? August 22. This is where things shifted. The morning phantom entry, 08, winds W15 gusting 25, humidity 34%, red flag conditions developing. Major event possible. This is going to be a bad day, Ray. Watch everything. I'll be watching too. I called in red flag conditions and spent the day on high alert, scanning every quarter of the horizon in rotation, barely sitting down. At 1340, Claire's prediction proved right. Dry thunderstorm. Lightning with almost no rain. I counted 11 strikes I could see from the cab and knew there were more behind the ridges. By 1500, I had 2 confirmed smoke columns, 178 degrees and 310 degrees. Called both in. Dispatch already getting reports from ground units. At 1645. Radio. Cheo lookout. Dispatch. Go ahead, Cheo. We're getting a report of a 3rd smoke column in your coverage area. Can you scan bearing 2D8, distance approximately 8 to 10 miles? Bearing 288. That was Hooper Bald. I grabbed the binoculars. Looked west-northwest. For a few seconds, nothing. Then I saw it. Not a column exactly. A thickening haze low on the ridge. Gray-white. Moving east with the wind. Dispatch. I visual on a smoke source near bearing 288. Low column. Gray-white. Drifting east. Possible ground fire. Approximate distance 9 miles. Vicinity of Hooper Bald. Capiccio. Dispatching a crew. Any structures or persons in the area? My throat closed. Unknown, I said. I put down the radio, opened the logbook, turned to the next page. Writing, not an observation. One line. I see it. I'm moving. Don't worry about me. But the handwriting was different. Still recognizably hers. Same letter forms, same left-leaning slant, but shaky, rushed. The pen had pressed harder than usual. The I at the beginning had a small ink blot where it had hesitated. She was scared. I watched the smoke through the binoculars for 2 hours. It grew, then stabilized, then started to die as the initial attack crew reached it. By dark, Patty said it was at 2 acres and 60% contained. Full containment expected by morning. I didn't sleep. Sat by the west window watching for the signal mirror, even though it was dark and there was nothing to reflect. Morning. Open the logbook. August 23, 0800, I'm okay. Camp is gone. Everything I had is gone. But I'm okay. I relocated east to the tree line. I can still see your tower. I can still work. Camp gone. 3 years of composition notebooks. The binoculars. The radio she never had batteries for. The storage tub with its careful contents. All of it. Burned. And her first thought was that she could still see my tower. After August 20 set, the phantom entries changed. Shorter, more essential. Wind, visibility, humidity. The numbers were still there, but the conversational asides were gone. No more watch afternoon thermals. No more tell Patty. Just the data, clean and precise, like she was conserving something. I hiked to Hooper Bald on August 26. The burn scar was obvious. A black tongue of charred grass across the east side, right through where her camp had been. The cairn was gone. The rock it sat on was cracked from heat. I found her new position about a quarter-mile east, just inside the tree line where the bald met the forest. A minimal camp under a rock overhang. Ground cloth. Single pot. Small pile of what looked like salvaged items. One composition notebook, partially burned along one edge, propped open against a stone. She was still recording. I left a note. I left the spare binoculars from the tower. Dale had provided 2 sets. I only needed 1. I left a pack of batteries for the radio and 2 days' worth of food from my supplies. When I came back September 1, everything was gone. Not destroyed, taken. She'd moved again. But the phantom entries continued, uninterrupted. September 4, September 5, September 7, September 9, September 10. I opened the logbook. 0800, winds N12, visibility 22 mi, humidity 48%, season's ending. You'll leave soon. The next person won't understand the entries. They never do. They never do. I read that line 6 times. They never do. Not they won't. Not they might not. They never do. As if this had happened before. As if every lookout who'd occupied Choa Tower found phantom entries in their logbook, and some followed the thread, and some didn't, and none of them, before me, had gotten far enough to make the network function. I thought about Glenn Massey's clean logs from the previous year. No phantom entries in his section. Then I went back and looked again. Carefully, tiny eraser marks, places where the paper was slightly rougher than it should have been, places where something had been written and rubbed out. Glenn had found the entries too, and Glenn had erased them. My last day was September 15. Final observation at 1600. Winds northwest, 8. Visibility, 20 miles. Humidity, 55. No smoke. A beautiful day, the kind where the mountains look like they go on forever and you can believe the world is mostly empty and mostly safe. I packed my gear and carried it down to the truck, swept the cab, closed the windows, cleaned the firefighter, left the logbook on the table, opened to the last page I'd used. As I was locking the door, I stopped, went back in, opened the logbook one more time. Below my final entry, in handwriting I'd come to know as well as my own, was a new line. Thank you, Ray. You were the first one who kept writing back. And below that, in the same hand, station will reopen June 1. New lookout will arrive by midday. South-facing window sticks and humidity above 60%. Left the shim in the drawer under the fire finder. Same note I'd found my first night. Word for word. Positioned at the end of my entries exactly as it had been at the end of Glenn's. I closed the book. I drove down the mountain. I've been back in Knoxville 7 months now. Went back to logistics work. Different company. Same kind of job. It's fine. I'm fine. I think about Claire Barham every day. I've tried to find her. Public records. Former colleagues. The Idaho Ranger District where she worked in 2020. Nothing. Personnel file with the Forest Service flagged inactive. No forwarding information. She effectively disappeared in 2020 and reappeared, off the books, in the mountains she came from. I've tried to explain the logbook entries to 3 people. My sister, a friend from college, a therapist I started seeing in November. None of them had a useful framework for it. My therapist, to her credit, didn't try to pathologize it. She said sometimes proximity to isolation produces perceptual experiences that don't map onto standard categories, and that the important thing is whether the experience was harmful. It wasn't harmful. That's what I keep coming back to. Whatever was happening, whatever is still happening, it resulted in earlier fire detection, better coverage, and acres of forest that didn't burn. The mechanism was impossible. The outcomes were real. I applied for the Choa Tower again next season. Got the offer last week. I'll be back up there June 1. I've been thinking about what to bring. Extra supplies for 2. A second set of notebooks. A better pair of binoculars to leave on the bald. And I've been thinking about something Dale said that day in the tower, about the mountains having their own logic. I think what he meant is that some systems are bigger than the channels we build to contain them. The Forest Service has radios and stations and logbooks and protocols. Claire Barham has a rock overhang and a burned notebook and a method of communication I can't explain and probably never will, but we're both watching. And the fire doesn't care who's on the payroll. Last night I was unpacking a box of things I'd stored when I moved after the divorce. Bottom of the box. Under some old tax documents. A composition notebook I don't remember packing. New. Unburned. Cover was blank. Inside, on the first page, in small, left-leaning handwriting, "See you in June, Ray." I closed it, put it on my desk. I checked the rest of the box. Everything else was mine.